Welcome to this episode of Inside PTI. Today we're going to discuss residue management in soybeans. Now when we think of residue, we've had a lot of conversations in the past years about how corn residue affects corn. Well, is there an impact on residue in soybeans? So last summer I got the chance to get out in the core principles plot and plant some of these plots. And now I'm happy to report the results of what we found. So when you think about a row cleaner and what it does, it's moving and paving the way for that row unit to go across. We're setting the stage for uniform heat and uniform moisture by creating the furrow that you see in the screen. That is our ideal furrow. Well, when we talk about the impact that residue has on corn and now soybeans, we have to think of it in a couple of different ways. Does residue in the furrow wick moisture away? Of course it does. Can it also create an insulative value and cause cooler soil temperatures? Yes. Does residue also create a disease environment, potential disease environment? It absolutely does. Residue in the furrow can also be a carbon penalty and cause nutrient tie-up. But one of the other things we want to highlight is that in a cloddy seed bed, a lack of row cleaners can also create air pockets, and we can also create an environment where the seed is planted into dry soil. So the movement of those clods throughout the course of the planter pass is very critical, and also creating a row unit that can rise steadily across the ground. So how do we accomplish this? In the area of residue management, one of the ways we can control our residue managers is through a CleanSweep system. That involves having a tank on our planter and a bidirectional cylinder on every row that controls the row unit cleaners up and down. So we can manage whether or not to make our row cleaners more aggressive or even provide them with some lift if needed, depending on the environment. So here's what our test involved. As we were planting the soybeans into corn residue, we wanted to mimic what it'd be like to not have row cleaners. So we simulated that by raising every row cleaner on the planter, lifting them out of the ground completely. Next, we ran the row cleaners in a float position. So we had 0 PSI on our cylinders, and they just rode across the contour of the ground as you would without a control system. Next, the operator chose to control the CleanSweeps with 20% pressure on the CleanSweep cylinders to what they believe was the optimal setting for creating a good seed environment. And here are the results. The middle bar on the graph is the setting that the operator used to create what we believe is the optimal environment. That is our control. But as you can see, the floating row cleaner that had no pressure on it had a 1.2 bushel loss as depicted by the top bar, and the bottom bar of the graph shows that we had a 2.7 bushel loss when we ran no row cleaners whatsoever. But let's look at the economics of that. As we look at this, when I ran my row cleaners and fully off the ground, not engaged at all with the soil, that would equate to a $26 loss on that acre. When I had ran in floating mode without any control whatsoever, but my row cleaners were engaged, I had a $11.70 loss per acre. So today's Inside PTI tip of the day is residue management at planting is important to set the stage for soybeans. Creating a clean furrow can ensure good seed to soil contact with adequate available moisture. It can also remove the carbon penalty or nutrient tie-up. The last point that cannot go overlooked is quite simply the convenience and efficiency factor. Adjusting residue row cleaners from the cab eliminates the need to stop the planter tractor to manually get out and adjust the settings. Well, that's a wrap for this episode of Inside PTI. If you'd like to get a hold of us, you can contact your local Precision Planting Premier dealer, or you can email us at InsidePTI@precisionplanting.com. We'll see you on the next episode of Inside PTI.